if your knowledge of DISC, high D's, I's, S's, and C's, the perfectionists, the Attila the Huns, the marketers, the team players, if that has helped you become more effective at work, you'll want to seriously consider coming to our Effective Communications Conference. We set the basics of DISC in an hour or so, and then we spend the rest of the day teaching you how finally to communicate effectively, which is to pay attention to what your listener does and communicate in a way that makes sense to them. At the end of the day, you'll be able to read someone in a conversation, determine their major DISC tendency, and then based on that, make some changes in how you deliver to improve the chances that you get harmony and congruence and collaboration and not drama, conflict, and tension. Come see us.
Welcome to Career Tools. This week, Negotiation Chapter 4, Easy on People. Okay, Danny, it's you and me again.
It is.
These are always the best recordings.
I think so.
And we're going to talk about negotiation, which is something you're really good at. So
Oh,
we'll be
you're
good.
so sweet.
I got to be good at them because as a high D, all I want in life is what I want. And so I learned to get what I want, and that's what negotiation is all about. It's about getting what you want. But when you're in the middle of a negotiation, it's really, you have to think quick because you're talking to someone and you're trying to think about all the things you've thought about before, about what you want and about what you're willing to give up. And then you're supposed to be listening to what the words they're saying and watching their body language. And sometimes you can just say something that doesn't make sense, or it offends them some way, or it just makes them feel that you're not a good party in the negotiation. And you feel like you're losing that person and the negotiation is going sour.
Right. Yeah. I've been on the other side of that.
Yeah. But the fortunate thing is, if you've done the negotiation well from the beginning, then you can probably be forgiven one or two of those slips because you've developed a rapport with the person because you've been treating them as a person. What a lot of people do is treat them as, I don't know, some wall to be overcome.
Right. An enemy. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then if you stumble a little bit and you haven't been treating the other person kindly, then that stumble is probably going to be more likely to be more fatal. Right.
Yeah.
Versus if you've been polite and kind and not adversarial and you fumble or stumble a little bit, they're probably going to forgive you.
Exactly. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So the outline is, first of all, use empathy, keep the people and the company separate, and keep thinking long term. We're going to start with use empathy.
Right. And when we say empathy, well, it's not just when we say it. I mean, the definition of empathy is it means to have an understanding of what someone else is feeling, which is not the same as sympathy. And a lot of people, I think, use the two interchangeably. Mm-hmm. And sympathy is really closer to compassion or pity even. And empathy it reminds me of the quote from Harper Lee: "You never really know a man until you understand things from his point of view," right? So with empathy, you're really looking at the situation from the other side, from the person sitting across from you at the table.
Yeah, exactly. And just because you understand someone's point of view doesn't mean you actually agree with them. Like, the two things are not inextricably linked. I can understand why a teenager wants to go out all night with his friends and come in at like 4 a.m, but I'm not going to agree that he can. On the other hand, if his homework's done and he's going to be back by 10:30, then I might agree. You still get to negotiate. You don't have to remember what it's like to be a teenager and think, oh, well, I'll let him out till 3 a.m. You still have to care for his education. And so you don't have to agree. And so when you're negotiating, you don't have to think, if I say that I can see where he's coming from, he's going to think I agree with him. Because those two things are not linked.
That's one of my favorite phrases. I use that phrase a lot when I'm delivering at conferences, which is not a negotiation, but sometimes there's tension, right? Sometimes somebody at the conference is maybe disagreeing a little bit with our guidance or our recommendation. And phrases like, I can understand why you would want that, or I can understand why you think that, I can see where you're coming from, I can see how that benefits your business, right? Those types of phrases really help kind of ease the tension a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, one of our favorite rules at Manager Tools is and, not but, right? Replacing whenever you want to say but, replace it with the word and. While it doesn't say you're agreeing with the person, it definitely reduces the conflict. Like there's a big difference between the two words and, not but. For example, I can understand why you'd want to limit the term of this agreement, and I hope you can see how it limits our ability to take longer term actions, which would be beneficial for our company. Is there a way here that we can meet in the middle, right? Compare that to, I can understand why you'd want to limit the term of this agreement, but it really limits our ability to take longer term actions, right?
Yeah.
Those two
It's
sentences,
a whole different tone.
Totally different tone.
So, having empathy, staying in somebody, seeing the negotiation from the other person's point of view is important. And not but is that's just a side benefit here to this guidance because we're that good. So the second part is keep the people and the company separate.
Yeah, I love this one, Wendy. This one is really a really good point, because you got to remember that both sides of the negotiation are representing the company. And that's not the same as being an individual customer. That's not the same as representing yourself, right? When you're representing your company, you say all kinds of things that you wouldn't say if you were just talking about yourself. And you're representing your company in this negotiation, and the person across from you, they're representing their company. And so they're probably going to have to say things that they would not necessarily say as an individual person either, but the company has told them they have to say. They've been instructed, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if they work in, let's say, procurement, the whole of procurement might have been told, okay, this year you've got to keep the vendors to no more than a 2% increase. And the guy might love you as a vendor, and he might really see how you deserve 4% or 5%. And he might see that the economy would suggest that you should get 5%. But he's been told 2%. And really, you can't expect him to deviate from that. And it's not because he as a person is trying to get your back up. It's because he's been instructed to say that. And if you try and make him do something that he has been instructed not to do, you're making him choose between you and his job.
Yeah.
And you are always going to lose.
Yes, you are. He is not going to choose you over his ability or her ability to take care of his or her family and pay the mortgage.
Yeah, in exactly the same way that you're not, right? If somebody said to you, you got to give him 2% or you'll lose your job, you'd be like, yeah, I'll give him 2%.
And one of the things that I thought of, Wendy, when you were just saying that is, it could very well be that this person across from you has even gone to bat for you in the company and tried to get you the 4%. When I used to work with vendors, I would do that a lot. I would be told, you got to stick to this. And I would try to negotiate with my boss or with whoever was setting those rules and say, but this vendor has been a really good long-term partner for us, and they've done this and this and this and this. And that's why I think it's fair for us to give them the 4%. And I was still told no, 2%. And so again, that they're representing the company, they could have even tried to get you what you want, and we're still told no.
So playing hardball with that person really isn't fair, because the entity that you want to play hardball with is the company. It's the company that sets those rules, made up by a group of people, but not necessarily this person.
Right.
And even if that person, even if it was this person, they're doing that for the shareholders or the employees or the customers or whatever. They're not doing it for themselves just to wind you up, which is, my instant response is, you're just trying to wind me up. You're just doing it because you don't like me.
Miss Heidi.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you are just in my way. But you can't put pressure on the company by putting pressure on this person. Well, you can, but it's counterproductive, because you're putting them between a rock and a hard place, and there is nowhere for them to go. Whereas if you're softer, if you say, okay, I can see why the company is telling you 2%, and I understand that, but is there something else we can do? Because negotiations are rarely about one thing, right? Even if you're buying 500 plastic coffee cups, there's the delivery date, there's the quality, there's the price, there's what else you're buying.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things. There could be art fees and setup fees, and I know all about coffee cups. When I've ordered a lot of coffee cups.
If you pay art fees, do you get them like arranged nicely?
No.
I was like, I'll pay extra and have them like a tulip.
Maybe they can't negotiate on the 2%, but maybe they can negotiate somewhere else, right? That was one of the things I used to do a lot with my vendors is I would say, guys, I can't go above this, or I can't go beyond this, but I do have some wiggle room in this other area, like the shipping costs or, those types of things. So rarely was I given instructions or rules that left me no room to negotiate in any other area. One of the things I also used to do with a lot of vendors was, if you'll meet my specs, if you'll meet me at the 2% here, then I promise you that we'll order at least X thousands of dollars more for you over the next 12 months or something like that.
And you can only do that if you're separating this person who is a human being just like you, who cares about his family, who wants to make sure that his family are fed and go to school and all that kind of stuff, that wants an interesting life and a challenging job, all the things that you want from the company that's playing hardball. If you get them mixed up, it just makes you adversarial against the person, and the more adversarial you are, the less they want to help you.
Yeah, if you come in totally adversarial, then those other areas where they might be willing to negotiate with you, they're probably going to start playing hardball in those areas, and that's not good.
Yeah.
Which I think that segues very nicely into our last point, which is keep thinking long term. Right? There could be hundreds of suppliers that you could use. There might be thousands of potential customers for your product. And if you're in a negotiation, though, you have already decided to put time and energy into trying to find an agreement. You've already decided that this supplier or this customer is worth you spending the time to negotiate. And if you always negotiate hard and you always take a hard line and you only make an agreement in 2 out of 10 negotiations, then you're really losing a lot of value out of the other 8 that are on the table. And in the short term, that's a loss of time. But in the long term, that's going to be a significant loss of revenue, right? One way or another, that's going to impact your bottom line.
Absolutely. Because every negotiation takes a ton of preparation. So even if it's just the preparation time that's wasted, that's 2 out of 10. I'm trying to work out the math, but I can't do it because Mike and Mark aren't here to do it for me.
And I'm no help there.
It's a significant portion of your year, I'm sure. It must be, right?
Yeah, and you've already decided that there's enough here positive to at least have the negotiation, right? Mm-hmm. And just taking a total hard line decreases the chances that you're going to close in a way that's advantageous. And so you're really kind of shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah. And it's kind of hard to see, right? Because you think of coffee cup vendors, you think, there's thousands of them, thousands and thousands, right? So what am I losing? I'm losing one and I'll just pick another one up somewhere else. But if we use an example that's closer to most of us in our real lives, let's say I'm the ideal customer for a credit card. I keep a balance, but I pay the minimum steadily and I don't go over my limit. But every time they increase my limit, I use that increase. I use a substantial amount of the amount that they're willing to give me.
And you are an ideal customer.
Yeah, exactly. In theory, I'm one of millions, right? There are 310 million people in the United States. So in theory, there's probably hundreds of millions of people who fit that profile. But actually, it's not true. The credit card company might go, there's, millions. So if she doesn't take our credit card, we'll just go find someone else down the road. But in order to use that card the way that I'm using it and that they want me to use it, I have to be employed. I could be a multimillionaire and sitting around eating bonbons, having made my millions and retired. But then I'm unlikely to need a credit card. So we're guessing I'm probably employed. And in the US, that brings it down from 330 to 120 million. You know, there's old people and young people, they're excluded. There's people who stay at home. There's people who retired early, and so on. And now we're only down to 120 million, which still sounds like a big number, right? So they'll want me to have a checking account, which not everybody has. They might want me to be in a certain state in order to have financial laws that are beneficial to them, or at least not bad for them. By the time they've whittled all the things down that make me the right customer, I might be less than a few 100,000. And I'm going to come up on their list again and again and again. And, you know, maybe I asked for a bigger limit last time they offered me a card and they said no. And so every time I get an email from them, or every time I get some mail from them, I'm going to go, I don't like them. They didn't play with me. And just throw it away. And even though there's 100,000, say, or 500,000 customers, they can't afford for that many people to be just going, no, move on, right? Because they need a certain number of customers. And so the idea that you're able to go out and find another customer who fits your profile, who's in your location, who has the financial things that you need, who does the delivery, who's got the quality and so on that you want, is kind of a misnomer. It's kind of something that you think that until you start to think about the details, and then you realize that potentially there isn't that many other vendors you can go to. And what's more, those vendors probably all know each other. So if you want to play hardball, you only get to play hardball with one or two of them, and then people start to say,
"I'm
sorry, I'm not working with you."
Yeah, it doesn't take long to get a reputation in those types of circles. It's burning bridges is never a good idea, because chances are you're going to meet that person or that company again, right? You might try to do some other type of business with them, or maybe you run into that person at a networking session, or maybe they have the ability to introduce you to another customer, right? So all kinds of potential there, that if you've kind of, been a jerk during this negotiation, you're going to really hurt your chances. I had an experience pretty early in my career, Wendy, when I was young and stupid, and I thought negotiation was kind of being a jerk, and I had a little bit of power and thought I'm going to run this thing the way I want to. And I was meeting with a potential vendor, and I was kind of like, oh, I'm really much too busy and I don't have time for this, and we've already got our vendors lined up, and I was a little bit of a jerk. I mean, I'm not proud to say it. And because he followed the things that we just talked about, he stayed polite. He was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I understand you're busy. I understand you've already got stuff lined up, and maybe now's not the right time. He took the long view, and I ended up doing hundreds of thousands of dollars of business with him over the next 5 or 6 years. Largely because during that first meeting, after I realized I had kind of been a jerk, I was like, even though I was a jerk, he was really nice. He didn't treat me like a jerk back. And he ended up being my best supplier. And we ended up having, really good client, customer, vendor relationship, and which was really good for the organization, all kinds of money saved. But it was not because of me. It was because he did these things. And, that was good for his business. And that led him to get my peers all over the country buying from him as well. So you just never know.
He was a man who knew.
He knew. He was smart.
And of course, none of this means that you should just bend over and roll over and allow somebody to get everything they want from a negotiation. Being nice or being empathetic or being kind doesn't mean that the other person gets everything. You are still representing your company. You still have to get the things that are really important to you. And if you can't get those things, that's okay. right? If you've negotiated in good faith and you've been empathetic, you've related to the person and not the rules, and you've really tried and you can't get together, it's okay. Like, we don't want you to ruin your company's financials because we've told you to be nice in negotiations. But it's really easy to go away from those kind of negotiations going, I'm really sorry it didn't work out, on both sides, and being okay with that and still being friendly to each other as people. And it's amazing how often that comes around.
Yeah.
And you end up negotiating with them again because they stay in your space, and maybe they change their service, or maybe you change your limit for how much you'll pay for something, and you end up negotiating again. And if you've been playing hardball, that second meeting is really hard.
Yes.
I bet it was hard for you to call him up and go, yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Actually.
I was. Lucky enough, I was smart enough to at least apologize and eat a little crow. And he was classy enough to say all the right things. But yeah, it was a little embarrassing. It was humbling, right? To realize I had gone from thinking, well, I'm the one in power in this negotiation, to going to him later and saying, I really need your help. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the things we learn when we're young.
Yes.
And hopefully the people that are listening to this don't need to go through that because we've just told them what to do.
There you go.
Yeah. So the less confrontational any negotiation is, the better it is for every party, right? That having confrontation just doesn't get anywhere. To stay empathetic, to stay connected to the person that you're negotiating with or the people, and to remember these people are going to come around again. I'm going to need to do this again. There is no point in playing hardball for something that I don't really want right now, because that will come back to bite me. If you can keep those things in mind, the likelihood of it having a good negotiation, of either getting what you want or being okay with not getting what you want and still being able to work with those people, is much higher. And that's what you want.
And even if it never comes back around, you have one more person in your network that you have a good relationship with.
Oh, good point.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thanks, Wendy. Always a good time.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this cast and got a lot from it, and we'll see you next week. Career Tools produces actionable guidance for professionals every week. To receive additional materials via our newsletter and to find products for situations you may face, go to www.managertools.com. Search for Career Tools on Twitter and LinkedIn.